Hey guys, this is Scott Horne of First Option Title. We're going to take a minute in this video and talk about our commitment, things that you look at, things that affect it, and when you have that, how we can get that deal done really quickly. So if you like the video, guys, please take a minute and like it. As we go through this, you can jot your comments below. We'll do our best to answer those questions for you. And we hope you jump over and join us on our YouTube channel as well. So I'm here today with Gary Sawson, who runs all of our operations for us. It was just Mr. I know it all about everything, it seems like, and he's awesome. So, you know, the first thing we get when we open title, we call it, is that commitment. What does that commitment show us? What's on that commitment?
So there's different parts of the commitment. There would be a Schedule A here in Texas, which basically is showing you what type policies are going to be offered. It gives you the vesting of who
owns it, right?
Correct. Who the current owner is.
We got to dummy this down. We can't use those big old the vesting.
Yes, that means who is the owner of the property, whether it's an individual, several individuals, an estate, what have you.
But by the way, that is so important to see that. Because the first thing I tell everybody is when you get that commitment, look at your contract. Are they the same?
Absolutely.
Or not? And half the time, they don't match up.
Right. And that's part of what we do as a title company is make those things match, right? How did we get from what's on the commitment to who is signing that contract? That's part of what we do. The next part of the contract, well, I'm going to skip. I'm going to go to Schedule C here in Texas because that's what most people, especially investors, are used to, and that's where your liens, your judgments, your tax liens, your IRS liens, your mortgages, anything that basically needs to be paid at your closing is on there, and that's what people are familiar with. But I think a lot of people, and especially investors, overlook Schedule B, which is the exceptions. That's where you're going to see things that pop up that are accepted from the policy. What's
a CCR? It is not Credence Clearwater Revival. It's
covenants and restrictions. So basically those are placed either by an HOA or sometimes by the city themselves, and that they put certain restrictions.
What about a deed? Could a deed have a restriction in it?
Deed will have restrictions, but that would be on an individual property. Generally, the CCRs and HOA things and exceptions cover a whole community.
More general.
Sometimes it's a town I lived in previously, Argyle. They have a mandate that nothing under 1 acre can be built for a single-family residence. Yep. So those type of things pop up, and you want to look at those, especially as investors, because sometimes that affects perhaps what you're buying the home for, what use it's going to be, and things like that. So I think it's really important that you look at that schedule and find out, are there things on there that are going to hamstring me once I own this property?
Yeah. By the way, that's really important in the commercial world, but in the residential world also, which is what we deal with 99% of the time. No, I look at that because you get a survey. I've seen house surveys kind of out in the country, and there's an old pipeline easement running right across the property. Most likely it was abandoned years ago, but it's still there. Or you have various easements, either an easement where power lines might be, overhead, underground easements, drainage easements, that could wrap into your yard or your property just a little bit out there, that you have to be able to look at and understand what those are. Now, those are going to be on the exceptions also, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and other little things like that that pop up. Sometimes I've seen situations where maybe someone has a carport, or they built a garage in the back, and they built it right against the property line. There might be a side setback line that shows up. Okay, that might show up as an exception.
Sometimes it may be over the property line.
That happens as well. And there has to be an exception of that as well, and those kind of things that are accepted too. And it doesn't mean you have to remove it, but you need to be aware of it at least. And look at that. Not everything is perfect. Now, I try to train people in the investment world to look at the property and how it sits on the property. They have things in the survey world, by the way, Gary, like they have a front setback line, they have a rear setback line, sometimes they have certain side setback lines, and if there's a structure on that property, which there usually is, it needs to fit within those perimeters. And when it doesn't, that becomes the exception that gets plopped on that exhibit, on that Schedule B. But you just got to look at those kind of things and kind of understand it. And as a title office, we're going to look at that survey if you have one and make sure those things are in line, so that at least then you as the investor and home buyer can then determine what you want to do.
Yeah, one of the things too that we always want to look for, and you as investors will want to look for in those exception areas, is you do want to find an easement, because sometimes and quite often in Texas, I don't want to say often, but I've seen enough of them to know to look for it. You want to make sure you have road access. There's a lot of properties out there in Texas that they were part of a 400-acre plot, and that's been sold, and now there's 20 acres in the middle, but on every side there's 4 houses in between them and the nearest street. If you don't have access to that property through an easement, you have a worthless piece of property.
Yeah, today, if you are subdividing a piece of property, whatever it might be, and breaking up like you described, it is a mandatory requirement to have access to that property. And if you don't have it, a property owner will be required to give that to you. But sometimes that's a process, either through the city, and I've seen it once in a while, even through legal action. But you can't landlock property in Texas, at least not anymore, but back in older days and get to the rural areas, that still pops up occasionally. Great point, because you got to have that out there. So there's all these things that can be on the. Let me ask you a question. This is a biggie. Let me just bring this up real quick. These wonderful UCC liens that we really didn't see until 2-3 years ago or so. I mean, yeah, we would see an old water softener deal, maybe, but I see these solar panel liens popping up. I see these water softener liens. I see all this stuff happening, and they shouldn't be recorded in deed records, but they are. So we have this UCC lien that is showing up on our Schedule C, which isn't a lien on real property, right? It's on personal property, but title companies aren't removing it, so they're putting it over on Schedule B nowadays.
Yeah, so what happens a lot of times nowadays, especially here in Texas, since we're in the Sun Belt, is, as you said, you have solar liens. Another one that I've seen quite often is water pumps, right? People have their own well, they need a pump to get the water up. Well, that pump may cost $30,000 that they don't have, so they take out a lien for it. They take out a mortgage basically on that pump. Now, generally in a refinance, they're no big deal because, as you said, they're not on the property itself, they're on the equipment. For a solar lien, a lot of times on that UCC, it'll say, it's specifically for the property, right? It's not a lien against, or I'm sorry, the product. So it's not a lien against the home, it's not a lien against the land, it's just a lien of, hey, if you don't pay your bill, we have the right to come to your house and take the solar panels off your roof. In a purchase, it becomes a little muddier, right? Because those are going to be transferred, the assumption is, with the property. A lot of times, a home buyer comes and is like, I have 2 houses I love, I'm going to settle on this one because it's got 8 solar panels on the roof, right? That'll cut down my electric bill. I love that. Well, there's $20,000 still owed on that bill. So how do we take care of it? So that's something that we always need to take a look at. And the buyer and the seller, generally have to come to some kind of agreement on what's going to take place there.
Absolutely.
I've seen where it's transferred, right? A lot of times you can call the solar company, say, hey, I'm going to be the new owner. We'd like this, this mortgage on this equipment transferred into our name. Sometimes there's arguments about it, right? Especially if the purchase or the homeowner has already paid it off and feels like, well, if I'm going to leave the solar panels behind, I want X amount of dollars. So generally, if there's real estate agents involved, that's an argument between them. But I've seen closings held up because somebody's like, well, yeah, we charged this much for the house, but that was without the solar panels. We take them off the roof. So a lot of times that does complicate issues.
And it's getting to be more and more of an issue, by the way, because so many of these solar panel companies have gone out of business. I think it's recognizing this too. The title industry today for solar panels are not going to remove it, even though it's inappropriate. They're going to put it on Schedule B for what I believe is a notice purpose a little bit. And I think for the investor community, it's also recognizing that those UCC liens have a life of 5 years. So they could fall off if they're not renewed. As you said, could the purchaser of the property go out and assume that loan with the solar panel lender? Absolutely they could. Could they just leave it on there? Sure. But the problem is that if you're going to have a lender in the future, I think, Mortgage companies, somebody else, they don't understand this. They want them removed. That means you got to pay it somewhere along the way.
Correct.
Which is why these liens have been filed in the deed records inappropriately, is because that's what those solar panel lenders and other people want, is they want to get those paid. And I get that. Everybody wants to get paid for things. But it's just something they have to navigate. It's a thorn in our side today in the title world and in the real estate world, but it's something we all need to be aware of so we can deal with it correctly.
Yeah, one of the things that I've seen that we're able to do sometimes, a lot of times in refinances, but sometimes with purchases too, is you can reach out to the solar panel company and they'll stay subordinate.
Yeah.
So meaning what they'll do is they'll say, okay, when's your closing date? The closing date's the 15th of this month. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to give you a release for 30 days, remove the lien from the property, let you close. 30 days from now, we're going to re-put that lien on the property, and then it'll be subordinate to your main mortgage. So sometimes that's a solution if it can be worked out, but not always.
You know, and you say worked out. The biggest question there is, can you even get anybody to call you back? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I see all these kind of things. But that's one of these issues, and really I try to get lenders to understand that, guys, it's not a lien on the property. It doesn't affect your mortgage you're putting on the property. Your loan is still going to be in first lien position when you close this deal. There's just an affirmation that this is out there. It shouldn't be a problem, but it is. So let me kind of walk through what I've heard you say so far about all this. So, one, Schedule A, vesting is one of the main things you're getting. Owner's policy, lender's policy, which we call a mortgagee's title policy. Match those up, make sure things check out. Schedule B, exceptions, which most people don't even look at. But you need to know what's out there. Oil and gas leases, other things like that out there, easements across the property of some type, maybe these solar panel or UCC liens might be on there. You need to understand, to take a time and just look at it. Schedule C on that commitment, the things that need to be resolved, whether you're going to remove them or you're going to buy the property subject to those, as we say, where they remain. And if they're going to remain, we're going to move those to that exceptions side. So you need to get an understanding of that. Now, everybody would love to close a deal in 3 or 4 days. Sometimes there's a reason for that. Most of the time there's not, other than they just want to get the deal done and make money. To do that, though, the vesting on Schedule A has to match up, right?
Correct.
It's got to be in good shape. Exceptions, not a problem. Schedule C issues, clean or rapidly get that removed in a day. And if you do all that, provided there's time, because now you still have to get lender docs in, if that's the case. If it's all cash, you got to prepare a settlement statement. Now, an all cash deal, pretty easy to do. So, can you close the deal in 3 or 4 days, maybe? I think the key word there is maybe, right?
That's the absolute key word.
Yep. But again, I think it's a reasonable expectation of time frames to do that. And, you know, minimum 7 days. At the very fastest typically is reasonable. But, you know, 10 to 14 days more reasonable on all the various factors. And it's just realizing Schedule A's got to match. Make sure you looked at Schedule B. Make sure we can fix things on Schedule C. And if everything works perfect and the stars align, yeah, you can move really fast. And if they don't, oh well, it's going to take more time.
Well, and as we've talked about previously, a lot of times it comes down, if there's a lender involved, we could all get everything done in those 3 days. And if the lender's like, yeah, we're not going to be done for 2 weeks, it's still an underwriting.
Yep.
Then that's where you're at. You know, nothing we do, nothing we say is going to make them move any faster.
You are exactly right. So guys, I hope this helped you out. Just understand a few of these items, what the commitment is, what you need to look at on there, and why. And it will help you understand your real estate transaction even better. So guys, if you liked the video, please take a minute and like it for us. If you got any comments about this, take the time and comment below. We'll do our very best to get back to you on those. Come over and please join us on our YouTube channel. We'll look forward to seeing you guys next time.